Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Real History. I'm your host, Jared Frederick, and with this episode we are going to be doing something a little bit different. We will be doing a genuine reaction video. And this film featured in this segment is the 2022 thriller drama entitled The Outfit. In this film, actor Mark Rylance portrays a humble, or a seemingly humble, Chicago tailor who becomes embroiled in the gang warfare between organized crime and the FBI. Although this film is not necessarily based on a true story, it is rooted in the real-life circumstances of organized crime of the 1950s. And since this was a movie that I had not yet seen, and I always enjoy a good period film when it comes out, I thought, why not take a look at it here on Real History? So, let's go ahead, dive right in, and check out The Outfit.
To the naked eye, a suit appears to consist of two parts, a jacket and trousers. But those two seemingly solid parts are composed of four different fabrics.
The film already has an air of mystery to it, something that I really enjoy. It's reminiscent of some of the opening scenes of the movie Road to Perdition, which we've also checked out here on Real History.
A man walks through your door. What about him can you observe? Is he timid, hunched over like a midday clock?
Some of these philosophical observations here at the outset of the film also remind me of conversations had in Mad Men and older films like The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit about conspicuous consumption of the 1950s, the style of the 1950s and going into the 1960s. What a person wore says something about their personality. And we get a sense of that here right from the outset of this movie. This was the dying era of the fedoras, and it was a time that was soon to vanish from American stylistic culture. And so this movie is in part a reflection on that passing time period.
Oh, wow, it's a nice one. Yeah, it's really nice. You making that for my pops?
Not this one.
You're making those fine dreads for somebody else? Who?
Master Rishi, you know I can't talk about my gentleman.
Is that what we are? You gentlemen. Whoa, get a load of English. Keeping his lips shut tight.
So it seemed here at this point that the tailor shop is little more than a money laundering front for perhaps the Italian mob, which, if the conversations here are part of the so-called Italian outfit, by the 1950s, this crime organization had really lost a lot of its momentum. In its heyday in the 1920s and in the early 1930s, when Al Capone was still around, is when it was most dominant. But there were vestiges of it that were still around by the late 1950s, and I'm guessing that is what we see playing out here.
I'm getting out of here.
To London?
To London. And Madrid. And Barcelona. And Morocco. And to Paris. You know, to make it happen a lot sooner.
A map?
A raise. Please.
I best go see if Master Ritchie needs me.
These expressions about international travel and escaping the city are not uncommon for the time period. Many Americans were fleeing to the suburbs at that time. The big cities were associated with grime, filth, being overcrowded and overpriced. And it shouldn't be any surprise to us that people would aspire to escape those environs in places like post-war Chicago.
Then I'll train. Learn the craft. One day maybe even take over the shop. But I don't want that. I don't want your life.
You're entitled to your own.
I am.
You're a smart young woman who's going to take herself far away from here.
I will.
And that's interesting because what we hear her saying was very common, generationally speaking, and would continue to become louder as we get into the 1960s. Young people telling their bosses and their parents that I don't want to be like you. I don't want to go into work 9 to 5 wear a suit and tie or a dress. I want to go out on my own. And so I think that's something culturally revealing here that we see in this exchange. Watch our protagonist here go about his work, you really get a sense of how this idea of craftsmanship has been lost in the 60 or so years since. Of course, we still have tailors today, but you don't have run-of-the-mill, everyman neighborhood tailors like the kind that we see depicted here in this film. It's all become corporatized. There's not necessarily these sort of mom-and-pop operations like we see in this film, and I think to an extent we've lost something culturally along those lines.
No,
Because I'm no
Richie,
goddamn
baby,
joke.
I'm not making fun. I'm not making fun. Come here. Baby, what's wrong? Did he do something?
Did who do something?
Francis, did he do something again?
Fuck Francis. He ain't family.
I know.
Huh? He ain't even Irish.
I know.
So these guys are with the Irish mob, not the Italian mob. Now that changes the dynamic a bit.
Mother. Quiet. Dead. Quiet. Yeah, back up. Back up.
As far as these crime organizations were concerned, having as large a net as possible, having fronts in businesses and local alliances in the community could offer them hideaways for circumstances much like we see here. And so it behooved them to indeed cast as wide a net as possible. And once again, my thoughts go back to the times of the Great Depression, when Al Capone even opened up soup kitchens because he realized that people weren't going to bite the hand that fed them. And so I think there's a very similar dynamic that we see playing out here.
And if they find it, I start shooting, you follow? Making matters worse, there are 1,000 racket boys out there hunting for it too, and if they find it, they start shooting, you follow?
I think it fucking gets you.
Shut up. Let me hear it.
Maybe we have a old vintage style Hitchcock MacGuffin. What's in the briefcase?
Hold it.
Nuh-uh.
Fuck!
Oh, in circumstances like this, crime does not pay. Although our protagonist here obviously does not claim to be a surgeon, these underground, semi-botched surgeries were not all that uncommon in the undergrounds of places like Chicago. John Dillinger famously underwent a very haphazard plastic surgery in order to change his identity, his physical appearance to an extent. And so the idea of these criminals of the underground undergoing things like this in these shady back rooms and alleyways, it's perhaps not surprising at all, for as horribly painful as it may look.
And if they get the tape, then they'll know how to hit back. Everybody wants to sing.
So throw it away.
Somebody's been ratting us out to La Fontaine. Now somebody help the feds get a bug on us.
This idea of a bug, a recording device, this was something that was relatively new in the realm of the exploits of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I believe in 1959 that the FBI did in fact plant a bug in a Michigan Avenue tailor shop, and I believe that story was the root of this screenplay. But the big question here is, as this technology is being developed, how can it be used for good or for ill? And I think that's one of the interesting questions that emerges here. To what extent is this technology going to be used? And sure enough, in the coming decade, the FBI would use such devices to a large extent, most infamously in recording the phone conversations and private exploits of people like Martin Luther King Jr.
I have to tell you,
Spit it out.
I'm the rat.
Oh, wow. The plot thickens.
Holy shit, you had me. You fucking had me.
But is he telling the truth? I don't.
I made you laugh.
A hell of a thing to joke about.
Well, it's the best medicine. You know, it is.
Can you imagine, huh?
Oh man, this would be a great stage play as well as a movie. A single set, great character development, good, tight script, good storytelling.
No.
Why? Because look at you.
What about me?
Nah, you're just a fucking tailor.
Oh, never underestimate people in seemingly low places. History shows us this.
Poor. Things were quite poor in England. Not a lot of men could afford well-made things. So these blue jeans became all the rage.
Well, times change, pal. Blue jeans are the fashion now.
This is some great historical commentary that our cutter is offering here. Not only were many of the primary business districts in London ravaged by the Second World War, but there was also rationing and great economic despair in the United Kingdom immediately following the Second World War. And in an era where things are being mass-produced and being corporatized on a far greater level than ever before, it becomes exceedingly difficult for smaller craftsmen to be able to make a living making things like fine clothes. And this conversation about denim in blue jeans becoming all the rage because it was a cheaper commodity and it was more pliable and it was more durable in many ways. This is some really unique input and insight on the material culture of the time period. And sure enough, the likes of American actor James Dean very much helped popularize things like blue jeans, especially in the movie Rebel Without a Cause, which I believe came out just the year before this movie is set.
Awake. But
Francis ain't my goddamn cousin.
he's not.
But what? What's the matter with him? Come on, spit it out.
This also reminds me of a lot of film noir movies from the late 1940s and the 1950s. Because after all, as the old saying goes, film noir is suffering in style. And indeed, there's a lot of style in this film in one form or another.
So where you been?
Made some calls. I checked in with a hi-fi shop. I was as a favor. They got a machine that could play the tape. I'm gonna go over with it this minute.
So you want to take the tape?
Yeah, pronto.
And I think the cutter's going to start turning people on each other here.
Shit. It's the man's caddy.
Let's explain.
Open the trunk.
What?
Open the trunk and grab his arms.
What you gonna do with him?
Grab his goddamn arms or else I'm hiding two bodies.
There are certain scenes in this that are also reminiscent of Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, where it's like this ticking time bomb in a relatively small claustrophobic space. Check out that movie if you haven't yet. There's a lot of parallels here in the narrative that I see.
You been to see LaFontaine?
Got a few hard boys still out there leaving calling cards.
The numbers game at the Green Dragon?
There ain't no more numbers game at the Green Dragon. Now it's a nice warm bonfire.
So we get a sense of this much broader bloodshed that is unfolding in the streets of Chicago elsewhere. This story that we see happening here is only the tip of the iceberg.
You're positive? He hasn't been there all night?
Another reference to Rope here. Body being hidden in a chest within this large room under large windows.
The customer says the jacket is too big. It is. The problem, I say, is the shoulders.
Seville Row, just to go back to that, it was known as the golden mile of tailoring, and some of the best known celebrities of the 18th and 19th and 20th centuries obtained their wardrobes there. Everybody from politicians to movie actors. And as a nice little bit of trivia, just a few years down the road after this movie setting, the Beatles will also form and have their Apple offices located there as well. So it's a very celebrated stretch in London.
You never told me why you left England.
It was under attack.
Nazis.
Worse, they're called blue jeans.
Just you and your trusted tools. For example,
The gun and the scissors on the table together. A little bit of foreshadowing, I suspect.
well, you have to toss away a few scraps, don't you? When you're cutting a pair of pants.
So many allegories being thrown around here. It's great stuff.
Al Capone's dead, isn't he?
After he died, his organization spread out, became more of a network.
Certainly, when this film is set, there were still vestiges of Capone's outfit that were still lingering around Chicago. In February of 1956, as a matter of fact, one of Capone's financial masterminds, a former pimp by the name of Jake Guznick, had died of a heart attack, and he was in a hideaway or a front in a facility or a business, much like is depicted in this movie. But when he passed away, his subordinates didn't want it to be known that he died in that specific hangout, so they had to move his body back to his home as a form of cover. And so it's true life stories and anecdotes like that that tie all of the loose threads, so to speak, in this film together. That there were these semi-phony businesses that were used to cover up shady dealings, and also the other big thing to take away from here is that even a number of years after his death, Capone still had men spread out all over the place in the very sorts of networks that were just referenced here.
If he shows up at her place carrying the very thing that puts the finger on her, I'm just saying. We don't know who she's been ratting to or if he might have been there when Richie showed up. But you don't have to be Joe Friday to put it all together.
Reference to Joe Friday might be something that's lost on younger viewers who are not accustomed to classic television. But of course, Detective Joe Friday was the main character in the black and white television series Dragnet, which was on from 1951 to 1959, and then there was a rebirth to it in the 1960s, and then again, I believe, in the 1980s. But he was played by actor Jack Webb, and Joe Friday became synonymous with detective work. And so when this film was set in 1956, Dragnet was one of the most popular TV shows on at that time.
You told La Fontaine. And hoped that they would all kill each other before they found you.
You got your hustle, I got mine.
Oh, a subtle femme fatale character here. That's great.
You think I'm just gonna betray Roy Boyle that easy?
No, I don't think it's easy. I think option A is we all die, and option B is you run the Boyle organization.
I think this is very accurate to the dynamics of the crime world.
This is Mr. Burling.
I didn't know the city had any tailors so classy.
Thank you.
So I suppose the LaFontaines aren't Italian after all.
Which one of you has my tape?
Money first.
There were African Americans who were associated in the organized crime world with the Chicago outfit. Perhaps most notable among them was an individual whose name was Theodore Rowe, and he was rather colorfully known as Robin Hood because he in turn gave a lot back to the community from his various economic endeavors that he made quite good on. And he eventually crossed paths and made enemies with the Chicago outfit because he refused to pay the so-called street tax, or that is to say, hand over his illegal gambling money to the outfit. But eventually, by 1952, just 4 years before this film takes place, he was shotgunned on his front porch. And so the important thing to remember here is that the crime world in these very cosmopolitan, diverse places like Chicago had an international flavor to them. It was the crime was very much a melting pot like American society as a whole, and I'm glad to see that this film reflects on that to an extent.
Since day one, people like me, people like our English friend, we come here and we make something of ourselves. And then right as soon as we get big enough, you Connell show up and you snatch it away. Like a spoiled child who'd rather break his own toys than watch somebody else play with them.
She's really getting to something here because she's alluding to the fact that beneath the surface of all this gang warfare, it's in essence a race war because these mobs were often aligned along racial lines. Italians versus Irish. Irish versus African American. The list went on and on and on. And so there's a real dynamic, a real violent dynamic along these lines that we see being discussed in this film.
You have nothing to fear from this man.
Why is that?
Because earlier this evening, I removed all the bullets from his gun.
Oh. Oh, wow.
I'm not a tailor, ma'am. I'm a cutter.
There is a difference, as we're constantly reminded.
I want so bad to be good.
I figured the scissors would be used in such a manner before this movie was over.
It's not perfect. You have to make your peace with that. How? You sit at your board, you lay out your tools, and you start again.
Very sharp ending to a witty crime thriller. So obviously this is a movie that is not based on true events, as is the case with so many historical films, but rather it is a throwback to a number of different genres from the 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s. This is a period piece. It offers us snapshots of certain historical moments and certain historical themes. But at the root of it all, it is just a really good, taut crime drama from the same screenwriter as The Imitation Game. And so this is a man who knows his craft, knows how to write a good story, and I really enjoyed this one for what it was. That wraps it up for this episode of Real History. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you enjoy these sorts of episodes, we invite your support. You're welcome to visit our t-shirt store. You can visit us at realhistoryfilms.com, and of course one of the best ways that you can support us is to check out our Patreon website for additional perks and benefits, and above all else, just the satisfaction of knowing that you're helping out our budding little channel as we move along. So thank you once again. We'll see you next time on Real History. Alright, the conclusion, because I'm losing my voice. It hurt to say every word that I did in this episode. And with that, goodbye. Thanks, Andy.